How are you guys doing? Today is Thursday, April 8th, 2021, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and I'm very excited for this episode of The Elite because I get my second dose of the vaccine today. For this episode of The Elite, I'm going to review the Elite performances and matchups from yesterday, Wednesday, April 7th, and of course, I'm going to preview everything that goes on today as we navigate through the world of sports one day at a time. Starting off, of course, in the NBA, because, of course, that's in the latter half of the season with the NFL no longer in season. Starting off with the first primetime performance of the night, and this one took place in Brooklyn as the Brooklyn Nets hosted the New Orleans Pelicans. In this matchup, they would beat the Pelicans 131-111 as Kevin Durant would make his first appearance for the Brooklyn Nets for quite some time from a few weeks before the All-Star break. In this matchup, the big difference for the Nets would be the middle quarters. They outscored the New Orleans Pelicans by 17 in the second quarter and by 13 in the third. For the New Orleans Pelicans in this matchup, their leading scoring will be their starting shooting guard, Eric Gordon, who finished with 26 points and 5 rebounds in 29 minutes, as he shot 9 for 17 from the field and a perfect 6 for 6 from the foul line. Their elite starting power forward, Zion Williamson, would finish with 16 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 steals in 23 minutes, as he shot 4 for 12 from the field and 8 for 4 from the foul line. For the Brooklyn Nets in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their elite starting point guard, Kyrie Irving, who finished with 24 points, 2 rebounds, and 6 assists in 30 minutes, as he shot 7 for 14 from the field, 4 for 6 from 3, and a perfect 6 for 6 from the foul line. Alongside him in the starting lineup, their starting center, LaMarcus Aldridge, from the San Antonio Spurs, would finish with 22 points and 2 blocks in 23 minutes, as he shot 8 for 12 from the field, a perfect 2 for 2 from 3, and a perfect 4 for 4 from the line. Off the bench, their goated power forward, Kevin Durant, would finish with 17 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, and 6 turnovers in 19 minutes, as he shot a perfect 5 for 5 from the field, a perfect 2 for 2 from 3, and a perfect 5 for 5 from the line. He made every single shot that he took. All 10 of the shots he took went in. And then alongside him off the bench, their elite power forward, Blake Griffin, would finish with 10 points, 2 rebounds, and 2 assists in 13 minutes as he shot 4 for 6 from the field and 2 for 4 from 3. With this win, the Brooklyn Nets are now 36-16. That is the best record in the Eastern Conference, and that is the third best record in the entire NBA. They have now won their last 2 games and 8 of their last 10. In the Eastern Conference playoff picture, they now sit half a game ahead of the second-place Philadelphia 76ers for the moment. And with this loss, the New Orleans Pelicans are now sitting with the 11th, they're tied with the Sacramento Kings for the 4th worst record in the Western Conference, as they have now lost their last 2 games and they have now lost 5 of their last 10. Looking out really quickly to the other matchup that was on primetime, that one took place in Phoenix as the Phoenix Suns hosted the Utah Jazz, the current holders of the best. Those are the two holders of the top 2 records in the Western Conference. And in this game, the Phoenix Suns, the current Western Conference runners-up, were able to get the 4-point win on the Utah Jazz in overtime, winning this one 117-113. Of course, with some clutch shots, the biggest one being a clutch one from Chris Paul to put them up by 6 and effectively in this game. For the Utah Jazz in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their elite starting shooting guard, Donovan Mitchell, out of Louisville, who finished with 41 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 assists in 41 minutes as he shot 16 for 35 from the field, 4 for 12 from 3, and 5 for 7 from the foul line. Alongside him in the starting lineup, their starting small forward, Bojan Bogdanovic, would finish with 20 points in 40 minutes as he shot 8 for 17 from the field and 3 for 5 from the free throw line. Their elite starting center, Rudy Gobert, would finish with 16 points, 18 rebounds, 2 assists, and 3 steals in 37 minutes as he shot a perfect 7 for 7 from the field and a perfect 2 for 2 from the line. And their all-star point guard, Mike Conley, would finish with 11 points and 4 assists in 35 minutes as he shot 5 for 16 from the field and 1 for 7 from 3. For the Phoenix Suns in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their elite starting shooting guard, Devin Booker, who finished with 35 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, and 6 turnovers in 44 minutes as he shot 13 for 31 from the field and 9 for 10 from the foul line. Alongside him in the starting lineup, their elite starting point guard, 11-time All-Star Chris Paul, would finish with 29 points, 4 rebounds, 9 assists, and 5 turnovers in 43 minutes as he shot 12 for 24 from the field, 3 for 7 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. With this win, the Phoenix Suns are now 36-14. That is the second best record in the Western Conference and the second best record in the NBA. They have now won their last 7 games. They are now tied with the Denver Nuggets for the best streak in the Western Conference and the best streak in the NBA for that matter. They have now won 9 of their last 10 games. In the Western Conference playoff picture, they now sit a game and a half behind the first place Utah Jazz, who now sit in first, and they also sit 3.5 games ahead of the they now sit 3 games ahead of the third place Los Angeles Clippers, and like I just said, they're a game and a half behind the Utah Jazz, as the Jazz have now lost their last 2 games, and they've only lost 2 of their last 10. Just to give a sense of where both teams sit at the very top of the Western Conference, and that's why this game, of course, was on primetime. Looking out to the games that weren't, jumping out to Indianapolis, the Indiana Pacers hosted the Minnesota Timberwolves, the holders of the league's worst record. In this matchup, the Pacers would beat the Timberwolves 141-137. The big difference would be the first half. They did outscore the Timberwolves by 21 in the first half. The Timberwolves would try to come back in the second half, but it just wouldn't be enough. For the Timberwolves in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their elite starting center out of Kentucky, Karl-Anthony Towns, who finished with 32 points, 12 rebounds, and 6 assists in 35 minutes, as he shot 12 for 17 from the field, 2 for 6 from 3, and 6 for 8 from the foul line. And their number 1 overall pick, Anthony Edwards, would finish with 27 points and 5 rebounds in 34 minutes, as he shot 11 for 21 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, and 3 for 5 from the foul line. For the Indiana Pacers on the night, their leading scorer would come off the bench, as their point guard Aaron Holiday would finish with 22 points in 22 minutes, shooting 6 for 8 from the field, a perfect 4 for 4 from 3, and a perfect 6 for 6 from the foul line. And then their starting small forward, Justin Holiday, would finish with 21 points in 29 minutes, as he shot 8 for 13 from the field on the night. He also shot 5 for 8 from the 3-point line as well. And then with this win, the Indiana Pacers are now 23-27 in the Eastern Conference. That is the 9th best record, as they have now won 5 of their last 10 games. They now sit 1 game behind the 8th place New York Knicks outside of the Eastern Conference playoff picture, as they now trail the Brooklyn Nets by 12 games in the conference. With this loss, the Minnesota Timberwolves are now 13-39. That is the worst record in the Western Conference, as they have now lost 7 of their last 10. They currently sit 14.5 games behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies outside of the playoff picture, as they now trail the first place Utah Jazz by 25.5 games in the conference. Jumping out to Orlando, the Orlando Magic hosted the Washington Wizards. In this matchup, the Washington Wizards would beat the Magic 131-116. They would outscore Orlando by 12 points in the second quarter. That would be the biggest difference between both teams throughout the game. For the Orlando Magic, their leading scorer will come off the bench, as their shooting guard Terrence Ross would finish with 24 points and 6 rebounds in 30 minutes, as he shot 9 for 16 from the field and 5 for 6 from the foul line. For the Washington Wizards, their leading scorer would be their elite starting shooting guard Bradley Beal out of Florida, who finished with 26 points and 5 assists in 30 minutes, as he shot 11 for 19 from the field and 4 for 6 from 3. Their elite starting point guard Russell Westbrook would finish with 23 points, 14 rebounds, 15 assists, and 5 turnovers in 38 minutes, as he shot 8 for 11 from the field, a perfect 3 for 3 from 3, and a perfect 4 for 4 from the line. And then off the bench, their small forward Davis Bertans would finish with 22 points in 20 minutes, shooting 6 for 11 from the field, all of his attempts from behind the arc, and he shot a perfect 4 for 4 from the foul line. With this win, the Washington Wizards are now 18-32. That is the 3rd worst. They're now tied with the Cavaliers for the 3rd worst record in the Eastern Conference, as they have now won 3 of their last 10 games. In the Eastern Conference playoff picture, they currently sit 6 games behind the 8th place New York Knicks outside of the playoff picture, and they now sit 17 games behind the 1st place Brooklyn Nets in the Eastern Conference. And with this loss, the Orlando Magic are now 17-34, as they now sit a game and a half below the Wizards, as they have the 2nd worst record in the Eastern Conference. They have now lost their last 3 games. They have also lost 7 of their last 10. They currently sit 7.5 games outside of the playoff picture, as they now sit 18.5 games behind the Brooklyn Nets in the Eastern Conference as a whole. Jumping out to Atlanta, the Atlanta Hawks hosted the Memphis Grizzlies. In this matchup, the Grizzlies would beat the Hawks 131-113. The big difference being the third quarter, where they outscored the Hawks by 20. And they won the game by 18. So, of course, that'll be a very big quarter. For the Atlanta Hawks in this matchup, their leading scorer will be their starting shooting guard, Bogdan Bogdanovic, who finished with 24 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 steals in 36 minutes, as he shot 9 for 20 from the field, 4 for 8 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the line. Also for the Hawks, their elite starting point guard, Trae Young, would finish with 14 points, 5 rebounds, and 11 assists in 34 minutes, as he shot 6 for 17 from the field and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. For the Memphis Grizzlies, their leading scorer would be their starting shooting guard out of Duke, Grayson Allen, who finished with 30 points in 30 minutes, shooting 10 for 18 from the field, 3 for 9 from 3, and 7 for 8 from the foul line. And then their elite starting point guard, Ja Morant, would finish with 19 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, and 5 turnovers in 31 minutes, as he shot 8 for 13 from the field, 2 for 3 from 3, and 1 for 2 from the foul line. With this win, the Memphis Grizzlies are now 26-23. That is the 8th best record in the Western Conference, as they have now won their last 4 games, and they have won 7 of their last 10. Within the playoff picture, they now sit a game and a half behind the 7th place Dallas Mavericks, and they sit 2 games ahead of the 9th place San Antonio Spurs, who are just on the outside looking in. With this loss, the Atlanta Hawks are now 27-25. That is the 5th best record in the Eastern Conference, as they now have lost 5 of their last 10. In the Eastern Conference playoff picture, they have won 1 more game and lost 1 more game than the 4th place Charlotte Hornets. So both these teams are sitting even in the playoff picture. So they both sit 6 games behind the 3rd place Milwaukee Bucks, and they also sit half a game ahead of the 6th place Miami Heat, just to show where the Hawks sit in the Eastern Conference playoff picture. Jumping out to Boston, the Boston Celtics hosted the New York Knicks, and in this matchup, the Celtics would end up beating the Knicks 101-99. Big difference coming in the 4th quarter. The Celtics would come into the 4th quarter trailing by 3, and they would end up winning the game by 2. They won at 101-99. And for the New York Knicks in this matchup, their leading scorer will be their starting shooting guard out of Duke, RJ Barrett, who finished with 29 points and 5 rebounds in 36 minutes, as he shot 10 for 14 from the field, a perfect 6 for 6 from 3, and 3 for 4 from the foul line. Alongside him, their all-star power forward, Julius Randle, would finish with 22 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, and 3 steals in 37 minutes, as Randle shot 9 for 23 from the field and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line, as he also shot 2 for 6 from 3. For the Boston Celtics in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their all-star shooting guard, Jaylen Brown, out of California, who finished with 32 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals in 36 minutes, as he shot 12 for 26 from the field, 5 for 13 from 3, and 3 for 7 from the foul line. Their elite starting small forward, Jason Tatum, would finish with 25 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, and 8 turnovers in 42 minutes, as he shot 10 for 21 from the field, 3 for 9 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line as well. With this win, the Boston Celtics are now 26-26. That is the 7th best record in the Eastern Conference, as they have now won 5 of their last 10 games. In the Eastern Conference playoff picture, they now sit half a game behind the 6th place Miami Heat, and they now sit a game ahead of the 8th place New York Knicks in the conference. And with this loss, the New York Knicks, like I just mentioned, they are now sitting in the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference, as they have now won their last 2 games. They now hold on to a 25-27 record. With this loss, or in the Eastern Conference playoff picture, they now sit 1 game behind the 7th place Boston Celtics, and they now sit 1 game ahead of the 9th place Indiana Pacers, who are on the outside currently looking in, as they are holding on to the 8th spot, the last spot in the playoff picture. Jumping out to Houston for a Texas matchup, the Houston Rockets hosted the Dallas Mavericks, and in this matchup, the Rockets would beat the Mavericks 102-93 to pick up their 14th win of the season. For the Dallas Mavericks, they had 2 leading scorers. Their starting center, Kristaps Porzingis, would finish with 23 points and 12 rebounds in 36 minutes as he shot 10 for 19 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, and he made his only free throw of the night. Alongside Porzingis, their elite starting point guard, Luka Doncic, would finish with 23 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, and 5 turnovers in 37 minutes as he shot 9 for 26 from the field, 1 for 9 from 3, and 4 for 5 from the foul line. For the Houston Rockets in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their elite starting point guard, John Wall, out of Kentucky, who finished with 31 points, 3 rebounds, 7 assists, and 4 steals in 34 minutes, as he shot 12 for 23 from the field, 4 for 10 from 3, and 3 for 6 from the foul line. Their starting center, Christian Wood, would finish with 22 points of his own, as he finished with 10 rebounds as well in 37 minutes, and Christian Wood shot 8 for 17 from the field, 5 for 8 from 3, and 1 for 2 from the foul line. With this win, the Houston Rockets are now 14-37. That is the second worst record in the Western Conference, as they have now won 3 of their last 10 games. They currently sit 13 games outside of the Western Conference playoff picture, as they now sit 24 games behind the first place Utah Jazz in the conference. With this loss, the Dallas Mavericks are now 28-22. That is the 7th best record in the Western Conference, as they have with this loss, they've still won 7 of their last 10 games. In the Western Conference playoff picture, they now sit 2 games behind the 6th place Portland Trailblazers, and they sit a game and a half ahead of the Memphis Grizzlies, who are currently holding on to the 8th spot. Just to show where the Mavericks are, as they trail the first place Utah Jazz by 9.5 games in the conference. Jumping out to Oklahoma City, the Oklahoma City Thunder hosted the Charlotte Hornets, as the Hornets were able to beat the Thunder 113-102 to pick up their 26th win of the season, as they gradually outscored the Oklahoma City Thunder by about 1 possession in every quarter. For the Oklahoma City Thunder in this matchup, their leading scorer would be they had 2 leading scorers. Their starting power forward, Aleksej Pokusevski, would finish with 25 points and 9 rebounds in 33 minutes, as he shot 9 for 14 from the field and 7 for 11 from 3. And then their rookie point guard from France, Théo Maledon, would finish with 25 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists, as well as 6 turnovers in 36 minutes, as he shot 9 for 18 from the field and a perfect 4 for 4 from the line. For the Charlotte Hornets, their leading scorer would be their starting power forward, Jalen McDaniels, as McDaniels would finish with 21 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 steals in 32 minutes, as he shot 9 for 14 from the field and 3 for 6 from 3. With this win, the Charlotte Hornets now have a 26-24 record. That is the 4th best record in the Eastern Conference, as they have 1 less win and 1 less loss than the 5th seed Atlanta Hawks. They have a better win percentage, so they hold on to that seed. But right now, they're both sitting even in the playoff picture, as they both sit 6 games behind the 3rd place Milwaukee Bucks, and they sit half a game ahead of the 6th place Miami Heat in the conference, just to show where they are. And with this loss, the Oklahoma City Thunder are now holding a record of 20-31. That is the 3rd worst record in the Western Conference. They have now lost their last 4 games. They have now lost 7 of their last 10. They currently sit 7 games outside of the Western Conference playoff picture, as they now trail the Utah Jazz by 18 games in the conference. Jumping out to Denver. And last but not least, the Denver Nuggets hosted the San Antonio Spurs and were able to pull off a 106-96 10-point win. They would go on to outscore San Antonio by 12 points in the second, third, and fourth quarters combined. But for the Spurs in this matchup, their leading scorers would be their point guard duo. DeJounte Murray out of Washington would finish with 18 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 steals in 29 minutes, as he shot 8 for 18 from the field and 2 for 4 from 3. And then their starting point guard, Derek White, out of Colorado, would finish with 18 points of his own, as he also was able to add 2 blocks for himself in 29 minutes, as he shot 7 for 15 from the field, 1 for 7 from 3, and a perfect 3 for 3 from the line. Perfect 3 for 3 from the free throw line. For the Denver Nuggets in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their elite starting center, Nikola Jokic, who finished with 25 points, 9 rebounds, 10 assists, and 6 steals in 30 minutes, as he shot 11 for 18 from the field and 3 for 4 from the foul line. With this win, the Denver Nuggets are now 33-18. That is the fourth best record in the Western Conference. Alongside the Phoenix Suns, they have the longest streak in the West as they have now won their last 7 games. They've won 8 of their last 10. In the Western Conference playoff picture, they now sit half a game behind the third-place Los Angeles Clippers, and they now currently sit a game ahead of the fifth-place defending champions Los Angeles Lakers, just to show where they are. And with this loss, the San Antonio Spurs, and then going back, the Nuggets are now 5 games behind the Jazz. And now looking at what the Spurs are now 24-25 as they have now lost their last 4 games. They've now lost 8 of their last 10. They currently sit 2 games outside of the Western Conference playoff picture behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies, and they currently sit 13 games behind the first place Utah Jazz in the conference as a whole. So that's currently what the NBA is looking like. Looking forward to what's going on with today's matchups. Because today is Thursday, the primetime matches will be on TNT. At 7:30, it will be a rematch of the 2020 NBA Finals as the Miami Heat will host the Los Angeles Lakers. At least they'll play it in the same state. They'll play this one in Miami rather than Orlando. And then following that, at 10 o'clock, the Los Angeles Clippers will host the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns are coming off a back-to-back versus what are going to be the other 2 best teams in the Western Conference, and they just came off of winning against the Utah Jazz, so this looks to be a good test for them. So those are going to be the 2 games on primetime. Outside of those, at 7:30, the Toronto Raptors are going to host the Chicago Bulls in Toronto for the first time. And then at 8 o'clock, the Oklahoma City Thunder are going to host the Cleveland Cavaliers. At 9 o'clock, the Dallas Mavericks are going to host the Milwaukee Bucks. At 10 o'clock, the Utah Jazz, who currently hold the best record in the West, are going to host the Portland Trailblazers, who hold the 6th best record in the West. And then at 10 o'clock, the Sacramento Kings are going to host the Detroit Pistons, and that's everything to look forward to in the NBA. Staying within the arena, but of course shifting the context out to ice, just taking a really quick look into what's going on in the NHL. Of course, now, and of course, full disclosure, every team has to play within their own division, of course, to limit travel in the wake of COVID. So starting north of the border, the Ottawa Senators hosted the Edmonton Oilers, and the Oilers were able to beat the Senators 4-2 as their center, Dre Sadel, would finish with 3 goals and an assist. He finished with the scoring play on all 3. Same with their center, Connor McDavid, but with their 24th win of the season, the Edmonton Oilers are now holding on to the 2nd best record in the North as they now trail the Maple Leafs by 7. Speaking of the Maple Leafs hosted the Montreal Canadiens and were able to pull off a 3-2 win after scoring 2 of their goals in the 3rd period. With their 27th win of the season, the Maple Leafs now sit on top of the North Division as they sit 7 points over the 2nd place Oilers, like I just said, and they hold the best record in the division as they have now won their last 5 games. Jumping out to see what's going on out west, the St. Louis Blues hosted the Las Vegas Golden Knights and were able to pull off a 3-1 home win as their goalie Binnington finished with 50 saves on the night. With their 17th win of the season, the St. Louis Blues now hold on to the 5th best record in the West as they now trail the Avalanche by 16 total points. Speaking of the Avalanche went to Minnesota to face off against the Wild, and the left winger from Minnesota, Fiala, would finish with a hat trick of his own. And with an 8-3 win, the Minnesota Wild picked up their 24th win of the season, and now they are holding the 3rd best record in the West Division as they now trail the Avalanche by 6 points in the table with 1 less game played. And last but not least, the Los Angeles Kings hosted the Arizona Coyotes and were able to pull off a 4-3 win after 3 of their goals came in the 3rd period. With their 15th win of the season, the Los Angeles Kings now hold the 2nd worst record in the West Division as they now trail the Avalanche by 20 points in the division. So that's everything that's going on with yesterday's hockey. Looking forward to what's going on today. Starting with the primetime matchups at 7 o'clock, the New York Rangers will host the Pittsburgh Penguins on ESPN+. At the same time, the Washington Capitals will host the Boston Bruins on ESPN+. And then outside of the primetime games at 7 o'clock, it'll be a bunch of games all at once because that's how hockey's lined up. The Montreal Canadiens are going to host the Jets at that time. The Buffalo Sabres are going to host the New Jersey Devils. The New York Islanders are going to host the Philadelphia Flyers. The Carolina Hurricanes are going to host the Florida Panthers. The Columbus Blue Jackets are going to host the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the Ottawa Senators are going to host the Edmonton Oilers. At 7:30, the Detroit Red Wings are going to host the Nashville Predators, and last but not least, at 8 o'clock, the Chicago Blackhawks are going to host the Dallas Stars in the United Center. So that's everything that's scheduled for the NHL, looking out to what's going on there. And then staying within the continent, jumping within the context of the MLB. Of course, it is a brand new season to look out for in the MLB. And I'm going to start off with the very first doubleheader of the season, jumping out to Washington, D.C. The Nationals hosted the Atlanta Braves. The first game that was scheduled eventually got delayed because of COVID outbreaks, that ran over from the first series. But in the first matchup, the first game would go to 7 innings as the Braves would beat the Nationals 7-6 as all but the last run for both teams would come in the first 2 innings. For Washington, their shortstop Trey Turner would hit his second home run of the season. For Atlanta, at least in the first game, Travis d'Arnaud would get his first double of the season. And looking at how the Nationals pitched, the loss would, of course, go to Erick Fedde, who wouldn't even pitch 2 innings in the game. Their elite right fielder, Juan Soto, would go 0 for 1 as he walked 3 times and he scored. Their first baseman, Ryan Zimmerman, would go 2 for 4 with a run. Their third baseman, Starlin Castro, would go 3 for 4 with 3 RBIs. And then for Atlanta in this game, their starting pitcher was Max Fried as he allowed 5 earned runs in 2 innings pitched as he struck out 3 batters. Their elite right fielder, Ronald Acuna Jr., would finish 3 for 4 with an RBI and 2 runs. Their elite second baseman, Ozzie Albies, would pick up his very first hit of the season as he finished 1 for 4 with an RBI and a run. Their elite first baseman and reigning National League MVP, Freddie Freeman, would go 1 for 2 with 2 walks and a run. And their catcher, Travis d'Arnaud, would go 1 for 4 with 2 RBIs. But with this win, of course, they picked up their first on the season. Going into the second game of the doubleheader, the Braves and the Nationals would go completely scoreless going into the 7th inning, where the only play of the game would be a home run from Pablo Sandoval, his second of the season, to give the Braves their second win of the season. For the Nationals, the start went to their elite starting pitcher, Steven Strasburg, who allowed no earned runs and only 1 hit in his 6 innings pitch as he struck out 8 batters. Of course, the game was spoiled in the bullpen. But for the Nationals on the game, their elite right fielder, Juan Soto, would go 1 for 2 as he finished with a walk on the day. And for the Atlanta Braves, the start went to Huascar Ynoa, who allowed no earned runs and only 2 hits in 5 innings pitches. He struck out 5. Their elite right fielder, Ronald Acuna Jr., would go 0 for 2 as he walked once. Their elite second baseman, Ozzie Albies, would get his second hit of the season as he finished 1 for 2 with a walk. Their elite first baseman and reigning National League MVP, Freddie Freeman, would go 0 for 3 in addition to him, their elite left fielder, Marcell Ozuna, would go 0 for 3 as well. And Pablo Sandoval went 1 for 1 with 2 RBIs and a run. With both of these wins, the Atlanta Braves are now 2-4. I'm looking at how the National League, how it looks following this. The Braves now have the 4th worst. They have the 4th best record in the National League East, as they now trail the Philadelphia Phillies by 3 games in the division. And with these losses, the Washington Nationals are now 1-2. They are now tied with the New York Mets for the 2nd best record in the National League East, as they both trail the Philadelphia Phillies by 2.5 games in the division. Jumping out to Cincinnati, the Cincinnati Reds hosted the Pittsburgh Pirates, and they scored 5 runs in the first, 3 runs in the 5th, and basically by the 8th, they were up 11-0. Pittsburgh would hit a grand slam in the 9th, but it simply wouldn't be enough as the Reds picked up their 5th win of the season. The Pirates picked up their 5th loss of the season. For the Pirates, their biggest performer was their third baseman, Wilmer Difo, who would finish 3 for 4 with a run on the day. And then, of course, their shortstop, Eric Gonzalez, would go 1 for 4 with 4 RBIs and a run as he hit his first grand slam of the season, his first home run of the season. For the Cincinnati Reds, The start and the win would go to their starting pitcher, Luis Castillo, who would allow no earned runs in 7 innings pitches as he struck out 5 batters. With this win, he's now 1-1 on the season. And then for the Reds, their right fielder, Nick Castellanos, would go 1-for-4 with an RBI and 2 runs. Naquin would hit his 4th home run of the season as he went 1-for-5. And alongside him, their center fielder, Senzel, would go 2-for-3 with 2 RBIs and 2 runs. With this win, the Cincinnati Reds are now 5-1. That is the best record in the National League Central, as they now sit 1 game ahead of the second place St. Louis Cardinals. And with this loss, the Pittsburgh Pirates are now 1-5, as they hold the worst record in the National League Central. They currently sit 4 games behind the Cincinnati Reds in the division. Jumping to Cleveland, the Cleveland Indians hosted the Kansas City Royals and were able to pull off a 4-2 win. All 4 of the runs for Kansas City would be scored on 2-run home runs from their elite infielder, Jose Ramirez. And then for Kansas City, their first home run would come from their elite catcher, Salvador Perez, but it wouldn't be enough. For the Royals, their starting pitcher would be Jacob Junis, who allowed no earned runs and only 1 hit in 5 innings pitched as he struck out 6 batters. And then out of their hitters, their elite catchers, Salvador Perez would go 1-for-3 with an RBI and a run. For Cleveland, the start went to their elite starting pitcher, Shane Bieber, as he did not get a decision. He would allow 2 earned runs in 6.1 innings pitched as he struck out 12 batters. And then their elite third baseman, Jose Ramirez, like I said, he would go 2-for-4 with 4 RBIs and 2 runs on the day. With this win, the Cleveland Indians are now 2-3. That is currently the worst record in the American League Central, as they currently sit 1.5 games behind the Minnesota Twins at the top. And with this loss, the Kansas City Royals are now 3-2. They currently hold the second best record, as they sit 0.5 game behind the Twins. Jumping out to Boston, the Boston Red Sox hosted the Tampa Bay Rays. In this game, the Red Sox were able to score all 9 of their runs in the 4th and 5th inning to beat the Rays 9-2 completely. A lot of great hitting, base running, and scoring from the Red Sox to get their 3rd win of the season. For the Tampa Bay Rays, the start went to Yarbrough, as he allowed 6 earned runs in 5 innings pitched. And no one on the Rays really connected for more than 1 hit. Their elite right fielder, Randy Arozarena, would go 1-for-4 with 1 of the 2 runs on the day. For Boston, the win, of course, would go to their starting pitcher, Nathan Eovaldi, who allowed only 1 earned run and 3 hits in 7 innings pitched as he struck out 7 batters. Out of their starting lineup, their elite left fielder, JD Martinez, would go 1-for-4 with 2 RBIs and a run. Their designated hitter, Christian Vasquez, would go 2-for-4 with 3 RBIs and 2 runs. He hit his 2nd home run of the season. With this win, the Boston Red Sox are now 3-3. They are tied with the Blue Jays and the Yankees for the 2nd best record in the AL East, as they trail the Baltimore Orioles by a game. With this loss, the Tampa Bay Rays are now 2-4. That is the worst record in the AL East, as they now trail the Baltimore Orioles by 2 games in the division. Jumping out to Detroit, the Detroit Tigers hosted the Minnesota Twins. In this matchup, the Twins they went into the 6th inning trailing 2-1, but then they were able to take a 3-2 lead following a 2-run double from Jorge Polanco to give them their 4th win of the season. For Detroit, the start would go to Boyd, as Boyd allowed 3 earned runs in the 7 innings that he pitched as he struck out 8 batters. Their shortstop, Willie Castro, would go 3-for-4. He was the only player on the team that was able to hit the ball more than once. For Minnesota, the win would go to their starting pitcher, Kenta Maeda, as he allowed 2 earned runs in 6 innings pitched and struck out 6 batters. With this win, Kenta Maeda is now 1-0 on the season. For the Twins, their right fielder, Kyle Garlick, would go 2-for-3 with a run. And then their second baseman, Jorge Polanco, would finish 1-for-4 with 2 RBIs on the day. With this win, the Minnesota Twins now hold on to a 4-2 record. That is the best record in the American League Central. With this loss, the Detroit Tigers are now 3-3. That is the 3rd best record in the American League Central, as they now sit 1 full game behind the Twins. Jumping out to Dallas, the Texas Rangers hosted the Toronto Blue Jays, and the Blue Jays came up short. The Rangers would score both their runs in the second inning from a Nick Solak home run and a Leody Taveras single. Simeon's home run for the Blue Jays would come in the eighth, but that would just be it, as it was a great pitching matchup between both sides. For the Toronto Blue Jays, the starting pitcher was Hyunjin Ryu, their elite starting pitcher, who allowed 7 earned runs in 7 innings pitched as he struck out 7 batters. Their elite first baseman, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., would go 2 for 4. Not many players for the Blue Jays registering hits. And then for Texas, the win would go to their starting pitcher, Kyle Gibson, who would allow no earned runs and 6 hits in 6 innings pitches. He struck out 8 batters on the day. And I guess Solak and Taveras would bring the runners home to give the Rangers their win. With this win, the Rangers are now 3-3. That is, they are now tied with the Seattle Mariners for the third best record in the American League West, as they trail the Astros by 2 games in the division. And with this loss, the Toronto Blue Jays are now 3-3. They are tied with the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees for the second best record in the division. Jumping out to Chicago, the Chicago Cubs hosted the Milwaukee Brewers. And this matchup would go all the way to extra innings, as Milwaukee would force it to extra innings. And in this game, the Brewers will win this game 4-2 to pick up their third win of the season. For Chicago, the start will go to Kyle Hendricks, as he allowed no earned runs in 4 innings pitched and 4 hits allowed in 6 innings pitches. He struck out 6 batters. And out of their lineup, their elite third baseman Chris Bryant will go 0 for 4 with a run, as he struck out twice. Their left fielder, Jock Peterson, would go 1 for 4 with an RBI and a run, as Jock Peterson went on to hit his very first home run for the Chicago Cubs. And for the Milwaukee Brewers, their center fielder, Lorenzo Cain, would finish 2 for 5 with 4 RBIs and 2 runs, as he hit 2 home runs on the day. And all of the RBIs for the Milwaukee Brewers would come off the end of Lorenzo Cain's bat. The 1 home run in the 8th inning to put them up 1-0, and then the 3-run home run in the 10th inning to put them up 4-1. With this win, the Milwaukee Brewers and the Chicago Cubs are now both 3-3. That they are now tied for the third best record in the National League Central, as they both trail the Cincinnati Reds by 2 games in the division. Jumping out to Oakland, the Oakland Athletics hosted the defending champs Los Angeles Dodgers, as the A's were able to beat the Dodgers 4-3 in extra innings to come from behind to pick up their first win of the season. For the defending champs, the starting pitcher would be the elite Trevor Bauer, who allowed 2 earned runs in 6.2 innings pitched as he struck out 10 batters. Kenley Jansen would blow the save, his first of the season. Their elite shortstop Corey Seager would go 2 for 4 on the day. And he was one of the big performers of the night. And then for Oakland, Jesus Luzardo would get the start, as he allowed 2 earned runs in 5.1 innings pitched as he struck out 6 batters. Their elite third baseman Matt Chapman would go 2 for 4 with an RBI and 2 runs, as he hit his first home run of the season as well. With this win, the Oakland Athletics are now 1-6. That is the worst record in the American League West, as they now sit 4.5 games behind the Houston Astros. And with this loss, the defending champions Los Angeles Dodgers are now 5-2. That is still the best record in the NL West, as they sit 1 game ahead of the San Diego Padres, as they've played a game in every single day this past week. Jumping out to Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Phillies hosted the New York Mets and were able to pull off an 8-2 win. They scored 4 in the first and they scored 3 in the fifth. For the Mets in this matchup, the starting pitcher would be David Peterson, as he allowed 6 earned runs in the 4 innings that he pitched as he struck out 5. Their elite first baseman, Pete Alonso, would go 1 for 5 with an RBI on the day. And then their second baseman, Jonathan Villada, would go 3 for 5 with a run on the day. For the Philadelphia Phillies in this matchup, their starting pitcher, Aaron Nola, would allow 1 earned run in 4 innings pitches. He struck out 5 batters. At the same time, their first baseman, Rhys Hoskins, would go 3 for 5 with an RBI and 2 runs. And their elite right fielder, Bryce Harper, would go 2 for 4 with an RBI and 2 runs for himself. With this win, the Philadelphia Phillies are now 5-1. That is the best record in the National League East, as they sit 2.5 games ahead of the second place New York Mets and the Washington Nationals, who have only played 3 games this season. And with this loss, the Mets are sitting with the Nationals at 1-2 because they both have only played 3 games. Jumping out to San Diego, the San Diego Padres hosted the San Francisco Giants. The Giants were able to win this game in the 10th inning. The win would come from a Donovan Solano sacrifice fly to give the Giants their third of the season. For the Padres, the start would go to their elite starting pitcher, Blake Snell, who allowed 2 earned runs in 5 innings pitched as he struck out 8 batters in those 5 innings. Their elite third baseman, Manny Machado, would go 0 for 4 on the day. Their right fielder, Will Myers, would end up going 1 for 4 with an RBI and a run as he hit his second home run of the season. And then for the San Francisco Giants, Kevin Gausman would get the start as he allowed only 1 earned run in 7 innings pitched as he struck out 5. Their third baseman, Evan Longoria, would go 2 for 4 with a run. And then their left fielder, Darren Ruff, would end up going 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs and a run. With this win, the San Francisco Giants are now 3-3. That is the third best record in the National League West as they now sit a game and a half behind the defending champs, Los Angeles Dodgers. And with this loss, the San Diego Padres are now 4-3 as they now sit 1 full game behind the defending champions, Los Angeles Dodgers, in the National League West. Jumping out to Seattle, the Seattle Mariners hosted the Chicago White Sox and were able to pull off an 8-4 win as 7 of their runs came in the 6th inning. For the White Sox in this matchup, Dallas Keuchel will get the start as he allowed 3 earned runs in 5 innings pitched as he struck out 3 himself. And then their designated hitter, Zach Collins, would finish 1 for 4 with 2 RBIs on the day. For Seattle, their starting pitcher, of course, would be Justin Dunn, who walked 8 batters in the 4.2 innings that he pitched, but he allowed only 3 innings. Their third baseman, Kyle Seager, will go 3 for 4 with 3 RBIs and a run for himself. With this win, the Seattle Mariners are now 3-3. That is currently they're tied with the Rangers for the third best record in the American League West as they now sit 2 games behind the first place Houston Astros. And with this loss, the Chicago White Sox are now 3-4. That is the 4th best record. They're now tied with the Indians for 4th standing, but they currently hold the 4th best record in the American League Central at the moment. Jumping out to Miami, the Miami Marlins hosted the St. Louis Cardinals. This game was scoreless going into the 7th, but then the Cardinals would score 7 in the last 3 innings to give themselves their 4th win of the season. For Miami, the starting pitcher would be Pablo Lopez, who allowed 2 earned runs in 6.2 innings pitched as he struck out 6 batters. And then for St. Louis, their starting pitcher would be their elite starting pitcher, Jack Flaherty, who would allow no earned runs and only 1 hit in 6 innings pitched as he struck out 6 batters. Their elite first baseman, Paul Goldschmidt, would go 1 for 5 with an RBI. Their elite third baseman, Nolan Arenado, would go 1 for 5. Their future Hall of Fame catcher, Yadier Molina, would go 1 for 3 with 2 RBIs and 2 runs. With this win, the St. Louis Cardinals are now 4-2. That is the 2nd best record in the NL Central as they now sit 1 game behind the Cincinnati Reds. And with this loss, the Miami Marlins are now 1-5. That is the worst record in the National League East as they now sit 4 whole games behind the first place Philadelphia Phillies. Jumping out to New York, the New York Yankees hosted the Baltimore Orioles, and in this matchup, the Orioles would beat the Yankees in the 11th inning 4-3. The winning run would come off of a fly ball, or it would be a single from Chan Cisco. But for the New York Yankees in this matchup, their elite second baseman, DJ LeMahieu, would go 2 for 6 on the day. Their elite shortstop, Gleyber Torres, would go 1 for 4. Their elite designated hitter, Giancarlo Stanton, would go 2 for 5. And then for the Baltimore Orioles, the starting pitcher was John Means, who allowed 1 earned run in 4.2 innings pitched as he struck out 4 batters. And for the Orioles, their right fielder, Anthony Santander, will go 1 for 5 with an RBI and 2 runs. He was their biggest performer on the offensive end. And with this win, the Baltimore Orioles are now 4-2. That is the best record in the American League East as they now sit a game ahead of the Boston Red Sox, the Toronto Blue Jays, and, of course, the New York Yankees. So, of course, big win for the Orioles, and that's where the Yankees sit at the moment, 1 game behind the Orioles. And last but not least, jumping to Denver, the Colorado Rockies hosted the Diamondbacks and were able to pull off an 8-0 win after scoring 5 of their 8 in the first 5 innings. For the Diamondbacks in this matchup, their loss would go to their starting pitcher, Madison Bumgarner, who allowed 5 earned runs in 5 innings pitched as he struck out 4 batters. And then for the Colorado Rockies, the win would go to their starting pitcher Antonio Senzatella, who would allow no earned runs and four hits in 8 innings pitches. He struck out 3 batters. With this win, he now has a 1-1 record. Their center fielder, their center fielder Hampson would finish 2 for 3 with an RBI and 3 runs on the day. Owings would finish 3 for 3 with 2 RBIs and a run. And alongside all of these players, or with this win, the Colorado Rockies are now 2-4, and with this loss, the Arizona Diamondbacks are 2-4. With both of these two teams sitting at 2-4, they both sit at the bottom of the National League West, as they both sit 2.5 games behind the defending champions, Los Angeles Dodgers. So that's currently what baseball is looking like, leading into today's matchups. But looking one by one as to how these matchups are going to line up, as a lot of these pitchers are entering their second matchups. At 1:10, the New York Mets are going to host the Miami Marlins. At 1:35, the Pittsburgh Pirates are going to host the Chicago Cubs on ESPN Plus as Jake Arrieta looks to get his second win. At 3:05, the Baltimore Orioles are going to host the Boston Red Sox. At 3:10, the Colorado Rockies are going to host the Arizona Diamondbacks. At 4:10, the Chicago White Sox are going to host the Kansas City Royals. At the same time, the Minnesota Twins are going to host the Seattle Mariners. At 4:15, the St. Louis Cardinals are going to host the Milwaukee Brewers. At 7:07, the Toronto Blue Jays are going to host the Los Angeles Angels. And at 8:10, the Houston Astros are going to host the Oakland Athletics. So that's currently what the MLB is looking like as of right now. And then last but not least, just leaving the continent just to take a glimpse of what's going on in the world of soccer. Of course, starting off with CONCACAF, just to get a sense of what's going on in the Champions League on this continent before I leave. Out of the teams that are in the MLS, Philadelphia Union was able to beat Saprissa 1-0 off of a 34th minute goal, and Toronto FC drew with Leon 1-1 after Toronto FC's only goal came off of a Leon own goal. So, of course, that's going to be very interesting moving forward. Jumping out to Serie A, the top team, Inter Milan, hosted Sassuolo as they were able to pull off a 2-1 win. Their first goal would come from their elite Belgian striker, Romelu Lukaku, and then their second would come from their Argentinian forward, Lautaro Martinez, to put them up and give them the 3 points that they need. With this win, they now sit 11 points ahead of second place AC Milan in the Serie A at the moment. And then another game that was up for grabs was between Juventus and Napoli. Juventus was able to beat Napoli 2-1 as their first goal will come from their goated Portuguese forward Cristiano Ronaldo, and their second will come from their elite Argentinian center attacking mid Paulo Dybala. With this 2-1 win, Juventus gets 3 points in the table, and they now sit third in Serie A. They sit 1 point behind AC Milan and 12 points behind first place Inter in the table, just to show where they sit. And then last but not least, looking out to what's going on in Champions League. In the first leg of the second day of first leg of quarterfinal matchups, Bayern Munich hosted Paris Saint-Germain, which was the rematch of last year's championship. Of course, Bayern missing Robert Lewandowski and Serge Gnabry. In this matchup, PSG would score in the first 3 minutes as Kylian Mbappe, their elite French forward, would score first. The second goal will come from Marquinhos, the Brazilian defender, in the 28th minute to put them up 2-0. To finish out the first half, Bayern would score in the 32nd minute. It was a header from Eric Choupo-Moting, their backup striker, who is a former PSG player. And then the second goal will come from Thomas Muller to tie it up in the 60th minute. And then in the 68th minute, Kylian Mbappe would secure a brace as he scored in the 68th minute to give PSG the 3-2 advantage going into the second leg in Paris. But of course, great performance from both sides. And then looking out to what's going on in Porto, Chelsea went to Portugal and was able to pull off a 2-0 win. Their 32nd minute goal will come from their English forward Mason Mount, and then Ben Chilwell, their English defender fullback, would score in the 85th minute to give Chelsea their 2-0 advantage going into the second leg, where they will be playing in Chelsea. So big win for both away teams as we look forward to what's going on today. Today is mainly just going to be Europa League matchups, as the big one I'm looking out for are Ajax versus Roma at 3:00 and Granada versus Manchester United at 3:00. So those are both two big matchups to look forward to, as that's everything going on today. Thursday, April 8th, 2021, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims. I want to thank everyone once again for listening to this piece. I hope all is well, and I will catch you tomorrow, Friday, April 9th, with everything going on once all of today's matchups are done. Once again, thanks for listening to all 49 minutes of my piece. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you tomorrow. Peace out.